Miss Amy Parker joined our staff several months ago, and she's our administrative assistant, and she's doing some amazing things. It's our goal to be able to go out and seek some funds. We're a department, I believe, that can bring in outside funds and grants for our community service work and our prevention efforts, which then I think will help all of us. It would be less we would have to take out of the general fund to be able to operate, and I think she's the lady who can help me get there and help me go out and look at funds. The district attorney's office was lucky enough to obtain a grant for a juvenile victims advocate, and so Miss Alicia Crone, her husband works as a deputy here. She's been placed in our office under the DA's umbrella, but we now have an advocate just for victims of juvenile crimes, and she's doing amazing things. She helped the therapy group with Christine. When we're done here, her and I are headed to Brookings to meet with a victim, so something that we've needed for a long time, and she's an amazing employee. And then we brought on Mr. Summers for community service work, and since I was here last time, we've had Oregon State Parks come to the table, and they're preparing a contract for us right now to be able to get back into the state parks and have our kids do some work there, which will bring money into our program. The days of kids walking down the road in orange vests and picking up garbage, maybe somewhat, I don't know, parading them around, we're hoping are over. We're really looking at community service projects, giving them skills, teaching them how to clear trail. The state parks wants us to let them clear trail, and then they get to spend the night, they get to do some work, they get to learn how to maintain, they get to learn to build bridges, they get to apply for summer work. So that's something that's new and exciting coming out. And again, we hope that the lawn's going to be completed hopefully by about the end of maybe January or February. Plants came in yesterday. Lori Van Zant picked up some plants for us. You're going to see that coming in and seeing some changes there. We have a couple House bills, Senate bills that we're going to prepare for come January, and we're getting in line with those. A couple things changing in the juvenile world, and we're focusing on prevention. Unfortunately, we're seeing a younger group come before the juvenile department, 9 to 12-year-olds, and we just don't have resources for 9 to 12-year-olds. Drug and alcohol treatment isn't designed for 9-year-olds. So we're taking some big prevention efforts. We're making some changes, and we're bringing stuff in-house. Probation officers all know how important it is, and they've all agreed. We're trained to work with 14, 15, 16-year-olds, so now we're having to learn to work with some 9, 10, and 11-year-olds. So everybody's adjusting and doing training. Matter of fact, tomorrow we're hosting a training downstairs, Interstate Compact. Douglas, Josephine, Coos are coming down to join us to do a training. We've had a small influx of Crescent City youth traveling to Oregon to take things from stores that don't belong to them, thinking they can get away with it. Large number of cases. So we are now working diligently to let them know that it's not accepted. There are consequences, but it's a lot of paperwork to do, even though we're a short distance apart. It's a different state, so it takes a lot of work to be able to go through those cases and set up appropriate means and to get them back to their own state. So our new concept is it's not really at-risk youth we're working at, but when you come through our doors, there's hope. There's hope for every kid. I'd hope we don't look at them as all at risk anymore, but there's hope for education. There's hope for change. There's hope for good family life. There's hope for an excellent future. Kids can be rehabilitated. Yes.
Would you speak a little bit about that hope of what I saw yesterday?
Yeah.
Because there's a kid that looked like he was couldn't be helped.
Yeah.
And yesterday he was all smiles. Yes.
We had a big success yesterday. The courts allowed us to actually host a graduation in juvenile court yesterday. We had a young man work extremely hard but didn't get his credits at the time of graduation in June, but he obtained those over the summer, and so Judge Beeman allowed us to, we invited the school. He was gowned up. We played the music. He came into the courtroom. Commissioner Pash was there to watch it, and he actually received his diploma. We had a reception afterwards. My amazing staff made cupcakes, and they all volunteered to bring stuff in. They decorated. He has a graduation photo and he has a diploma. So, yep.
And from what I understand, this young man a year ago was lost, completely
Absolutely.
lost.
He's been on his own for quite some time at age 17, trying to make it work. And he wasn't a criminal. He was just a kid that needed some direction.
Commissioner Gold?
Are any of your kids involved in the CTE programs at the high school for trades and that sort of thing?
Several of ours are.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Are they succeeding there, or?
Yeah, and actually, time's getting away from me, but I believe it was last Thursday, there was a large trade show expo over at Seven Feathers, and we did take youth over to that.
Good. All right.
I was there as well.
Yeah, it's like I said, we don't have a lot of resources here, but we're very creative. The staff is very creative, and I think good things are happening.
Just so you know on that, we are going to be in the next few weeks, we're actually going to present to the board later today about bringing a lot of those vendors at that trade show here for a similar trade show and invite all of the youth in Curry County to that. So
that would be amazing, because we've got some kids who couldn't make it, and they've already, they want to go. So
we've pretty much got we're coming from, I'm going to say of the 70 we spoke to, probably 60 of them are coming.
that would be fantastic.
So, yeah.
We would love to be part of that. We've got.
Great. Well, good job.
Thank you.
And appreciate the good report.
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
Wendy, I think on behalf of the entire board's office, we're really proud of the work that you're doing, and we're grateful you're here.
Thank you. We enjoy it, and I love this. I love Curry County also. So it's a family tradition for me also, and I love living here and I love working here.
You can give a little information on that, by the way. Your family history. Your
Thanks,
parents.
Wendy. Great job.
Thank you.
I'll
Next
just-
up.
I'll just say her father, Bill Wallace, was a district attorney here. How many years?
26.
26, and had tremendous respect around the state. I don't know if that's a record for a district attorney, but very likely is.
Searching for a beach
Thank you.
vacation? Find it at Verbo. They search millions of homes to find your perfect beach house where you all...
Hi guys.
Oh, wrong one. Wait.
What you're about to see
Skip it.
is the culmination thus far.
Why do we have an echo on that? I wanted to talk a little bit more about military losses and suicide. Why is that playing? It shouldn't be playing. The internet.
You're gonna.
And how serious this is in our nation. We are actually looking to, through NACO, to write some new legislation to bring to our president, who has an ear for this right now. I will say that I believe President Trump has made leaps and bounds for helping our military veterans and the caregivers that are required to take care of them. He has passed an executive order in hopes of ending veteran suicide in 4 or 5 years, making leaps and bounds with the VA and the orders that he's giving to do better service with the VA and get those resources to them much quicker. We are asking, we've actually got a few people to help write that legislation, and we will be hopeful by spring to present this in Washington as a legislative action for signature. I just wanted to show you kind of a stark realization of what's really happening in this nation, not only with suicide of veterans, but with suicide of everyone. It's becoming an epidemic. I've spoken about it a couple of times in the last several months. I spoke about it briefly last week in Port Orford, and it's becoming probably the second largest crisis next to opioids. And I'll reiterate one more time. Today, it's 9:30. Today, 8 veterans have committed suicide already today. And one of those veterans is an active service veteran right now. We're losing about 20 veterans a day nationwide. Think about that. I mean, over a period of a year, it's a number we can't live with. So these are some of the facts that are out there right now. This is a small thing that was on CBS News a few weeks ago.
Enduring and pressing emergency, rise in veteran suicides. A congressional subcommittee held a hearing today on military suicide prevention. On average, about 20 veterans die this way every day. Since 2017, at least 25 veterans have taken their lives on the grounds of VA facilities. 7 this year alone. Dean Reynolds has more on these heroes in crisis.
This is my favorite picture of us together. This was about 2 years before he died.
Alyssa Harrington's brother, Justin Miller, died by suicide in February of last year in the parking lot of this Veterans Administration hospital. A Marine veteran, he was 33. Gregory Miller is Justin's father.
He wanted to be in a military band.
Justin made the band, but the Marines saw he could make another contribution as a marksman in Iraq, manning a checkpoint with bomb-sniffing dogs.
The dog sat down, pulled the trigger. Those were his orders. And he said he did that for weeks, day in, day out.
When he left the Marines in 2007, his family says he had changed. While he still volunteered to play his trumpet at various occasions, he was increasingly depressed and even suicidal. Eventually, he sought help at a VA hospital.
He said we lived in the crisis.
But after 3 days at the VA,
He went out to his car. He looked at his phone. We saw the text from my dad saying that he'll come home. And at some point, he took his own life.
experts in this field say veterans who kill themselves on VA grounds, and there were at least 4 just last month, are making a statement about their treatment. Federal investigation of Miller's death said that Minneapolis VA made multiple mistakes, from not scheduling follow-up to overlooking his access to firearms.
We have people, but they're not trained the way they're supposed to be.
Some 6,000 veterans kill themselves every year.
We have, last year, 240 interventions. We've actually stopped veterans from taking their life.
Robert Mulcahy, the VA secretary, the department serves 9.5 million people. Since October, the VA has screened 900,000 veterans for mental health issues.
Of that 900,000, we called it down to 3,000. 3,000 veterans that are mental professionals say, might be this is that means calls, that means visits, bringing them into our systems.
In Justin Miller's case, antidepressants came in the mail from the VA 2 days after he died.
And the worst part of his funeral was that they didn't have a life familiar. There was no one there to for him.
The silent trumpet at his grave was a gift from his dad. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, St. Paul, Minnesota.
I think one of the important things we need to take from that is think about what he said. Basically, the city of Brookings commits suicide every year. That's how large this is. And I think we need to find a way to reach out to veterans because we don't know the shoes that these people are walking in. We haven't lived in their shoes. And people say, well, how can they not deal with this? I just want to give another for instance. My brother served actively in Vietnam for 18 months. He was a farm boy, played baseball with us in the backyard every Saturday morning, lifted hay and took care of cows and chickens all the years we grew up. Never hunted, never hurt anybody. He was a 4.0 probably GPA. I don't think they had GPAs back then. Was drafted in the military, 12 weeks in boot camp, another month or 2 in school, went to Vietnam. This innocent country boy, within 5 minutes of being on the ground in Vietnam, shot and killed a man dead to defend himself. Just think about what went through his mind that evening, much less over the next 18 months of being in helicopters and killing aerial slaughter with 50 calibers just flying over Vietnam, shooting people at random just because that was what he was ordered to do, as were so many of our veterans. And what these people go through mentally to deal with that, and then they come back home to sit at our breakfast and lunch tables and are supposed to be normal. We've got to do more to help that. We've got to do more to bring our people home and give them all the help they need. This man right here, he wrote a song, and I want to play the song for you, and if you would, please just bear with me. This is something very important to me, so I'm asking everyone to just bear with me. This is called Hometown Battlefield, and it's about the battlefield here in America that our veterans and people that deal with suicide are facing every day.
The song and me, and I'm embracing them back.
Just listen to the words to the song.
Got home from the service as the spring began its turn. 12 long months away. He folded up his uniform with the medals tucked inside. Started living for today. But the present could not find him, nor could his wife and kids. He was there, but he was gone. And soon his only comfort was a bottle and his gun. Something right that went so wrong. And the silence keeps on coming as the movie plays again. You can smell the yellow dust and death hanging on the wind. And we thought the war was over, but the headlines do reveal that another soldier died today on the hometown battlefield. He sits outside the courthouse with his pant legs tucked away, and no one knows his name. One more step there in the sand, put him where he is today. One more just the same. All his memories live there in the space below his knees. Back when he was whole. But that IED didn't just relieve him of his legs. It blew apart his soul. And the silence keeps on coming as the movie plays again. You can smell the yellow dust and death flying on the wind. And we thought the war was over, but the headlines do reveal that another soldier died today on the hometown battlefield. And if you're wearing loafers, you ain't walked the burning sands. You ain't never had to shoot another living man. It don't matter if we won, it don't matter if we lost. They were following their orders, no matter the cost. So I remember what they've given when I see my flag unfurled, free against the sky. We seem to lose them when they get back to the world. Can someone tell me why? That the silence keeps on coming as the movie plays again. You can smell the yellow dust and death hanging on the wind. Well, we thought the war was over, but the headlines do reveal that another soldier died today on the hometown battlefield. Yes, we pray the war is over, but the headlines do reveal
just want to say I think we need to do more, and I think there's a lot more that can be done. If you know someone that's thinking about suicide, a veteran or a regular human being, and you can just see something different, take the moment and just reach out and ask that person, are you okay? Do you need something? Can I help you? Or call someone to help that person. Again, we're asking these people to come back, veterans and specifically, from situations that we cannot understand what they've gone through on those battlefields. And just walk back into our society and say, okay, turn it off and let's be normal again. Because not only are they dealing with the things that what would be crimes in this nation that they committed by killing and whatever they had to do in those situations, but they're also dealing with the infirmities that they've lost, their legs, their arms, their minds. There's a lot that goes along with the untold stories of war. So I would just ask that this community, this county, and this country continue to remember our veterans and everyone who suffers from the struggles of mental and physical disease that we face. Thank you for...
Chair?
Yes.
Could we have another, subject to your approval, another moment of silence, and maybe those that might want to stand while we have that moment of silence can do so?
That's fine. Sure. Yes. Go ahead.
Gordon Clay, Brookings, Oregon. Let's bring it home to Curry County. We don't have 2018 final numbers yet. 2017, we lost 14 people in Curry County. That's matches the highest we've ever had. 5 of those were veterans. Last month, we lost another veteran. Somebody I would believe, I'm not going to say who, but I believe most of you know. It has got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to stand.
Go ahead.
Moment of silence, please. Mr. Chair, that was exceptional. Thank you very much.
All right, next we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Do I have any amendments?
I just have a change under number H. The original order said 15%. You were sent a revised order that said that pay increase would be at 10%. That is consistent with the temporary pay increase we've done in the past.
Okay. All right, so let me read the consent agenda. A, approve minutes, business meeting September 18th, 2019. B, to approve business meeting, special meeting in September 25th, 2019. C, to approve advanced health care. Community Advisory Council for Advanced Health Care. D, to approve a new hire juvenile administrative assistant. E, approve full-time equivalent increase for an employee in the district attorney's office. F, appoint members to the Board of Property Tax Appeals. G, to approve deputy code enforcement officer job position from part-time to full-time. And H, to approve temporary pay increase senior accounting clerk. Do I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as you just outlined. Thank you.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is it, now that we've already approved the agenda changes, is it too late to just rearrange the sequence of item number 7 on discussion and action items?
I don't have a problem.
We have several people here that are, I believe, for item 7C, state Oregon Parks land exchange. So if that's okay with the board, I'd suggest we move to that agenda item first.
I don't have a problem with that.
All right, we'll do that. We're going to move to 7C, and we'll get back to A and B. We have comments. Gary Garman? Morning, sir.
Morning, Commissioners. I couldn't let a day go by without being down here for a Flores Lake matter. I want to thank you for all the work that's gone into this agreement. It looks like something that everybody can not only live with, but flourish with. And hopefully this is a sign that state parks and the county will be able to move forward on the other issues that are out there and continue to add to the state parks and giving the county something they can make some serious money on. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bob Morrow. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Bob Morrow, Langlois. And what a great day. I think we've, over many years, gotten to this point where you have an opportunity to close out the Forest Lake Exchange and move forward with the state parks. It sounds like working with Mr. Havel and his team will be a great opportunity for you going forward. I know there were 3 points that you were going to consider today. The third one that Mr. Havel mentioned last week was potentially difficult for them was the timing on their team to do the trail work. I would suggest that you just accept the language that's there now and allow parks to work on their own pacing as they've done in the past. And it also sounds like we had a really great opportunity with Ms. Lang and the juvenile division working with parks, and our property up at Forest Lake is a great spot to do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing Phase 1 close out today. I'd like to encourage you to work on a Phase 2. We have 400 acres that remain up there. That is still, all the challenges remain, and it's a great opportunity for the parks to take that over and for the county to obtain properties like McVeigh Park that could be real money makers for the county instead of just a nice piece of property creating a view shed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, so Ms. Schmelzer, I think we have a difference of wording on some of this.
Right, you have 2 contracts before you. Council Huddle can actually go into the detail on them. It's, I believe one shows with the time difference between the
5 years and then 2 years.
Yep.
2 years and then 5 years.
5 versus 7, yeah. So, Council Huddle, do you want to just explain that?
Thank you, certainly. So really, there's only one difference between the 2 options for the board, and that is, again, the trail element. I was not available, sorry, I was ill at the last board meeting in Port Orford when Mr. Havel came down and talked about it. He gave the explanation of why the state preferred the language, and you have 2 documents, printouts at your places here. Essentially, it's under the post-closing obligations, and it's section 10.1, and the state prefers the post-closing obligation that says within 2 years they'll begin the process of preparing a 5-year plan versus the proposed from the county that said within 5 years they'll have a plan, or they'll have the trails completed. So really, that's what it comes down to. It's just a choice for the board to make, whether you want to go with the state's version. And, you know, that you've heard from the state, you've heard from the community, and I don't think staff has any real strong feelings about either way.
And I want to say, though, that when during the meeting, the parks did say they would do the 5 years. They don't prefer that, but they would do it. Commissioner Gold?
Well, I'm looking at, there's the green, right?
Yes.
And the state says the state shall, within 5 years, after closing, complete.
That is ours, actually.
That's the
The
county's.
green is ours. Okay.
The red is
JJ.
theirs.
You blew it. 'Cause I'm seeing huddles.
I'm colorblind, so don't tell me about red-green. So.
Okay. No further comments.
So basically, they're asking for 2 years to get the plan done, and then begin the process. And we're asking for, or at least that's the option, or previously the board had asked that they get the planning and the work to be done completed in 5 years. So it's this board's choice on which way you'd rather go. So do I have comment, Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, I'm just very comfortable with the state taking the lead on this, and I think in the spirit of what we outlined 6 months ago, this board, well, 5 months ago, this board, I'm just going to give them that time, and we're going to be involved in this process. We're going to be at a supportive position, and they came to the table on 2 of those 3 items that Councilor Huddle outlined that give him a little bit of concern. So I'm very happy, and I think we just need to move forward. Let them take the lead on this, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold? Okay.
I'm going to agree with Commissioner Boyce, but I'm going to add something here. When Chris Havel was there, he explained that the extra time was needed to put out a quality product rather than something very quickly. So I am going to go with the Parks Department.
It's all been said over and over. Thank you.
And I'm going to abstain from comment on it. So do we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
So the motion would be to approve with the state parks version of the agreement.
Of item number 3, yes, on the
Thank you.
5-year trail plan.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Boyce.
Yes.
Vice Chair Boyce, sorry. Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Commissioner Pash. Chair
Aye.
Pash.
I'm glad that we're getting this done. I do not still believe that it is a good deal for the county, so my vote is no.
Motion carried 2-1.
All right.
And I understand that there's 190 birds in the Flores Lake.
We're going to move on to forensic audit, and this is something that's been bantered around a while. So Ms. Schmelzer, you had some comments on this?
I did. Charlene Harvey, our finance director, did a little digging into the options that we have if the board wants to pursue looking at departments, basically. And that was that we could ask our auditor to do an in-depth review. That is something we can do rather than paying someone for a forensic audit, which is quite expensive. We could just ask them to select a department a year and just do an in-depth audit to look at those, just so we could see the health of our county, basically.
Right.
And they're willing to do that. That would just be a side contract. That's typically about $6,000. It's less than $10,000. And they could start doing that this year already. We would probably want to pick what department we'd want them to look at first. I think we're all concerned really about county finances and what's the health of the county, because we do have such fiscal challenges that we may want to start there. That's up to the board. But rather than do a full-blown forensic audit, I just recommend we do the in-depth review through the auditor.
And I think I agree with that. Like I say, we've spoken about this several times. I would not get involved in a business and without doing some sort of holding one's feet to the fire on the bookkeeping and the audit and the way that the county does things. It always is nice to have another set of eyes to look at this. Mr. Barnes has been very gracious and looked through a lot of things that we've asked him to look through. And I fully agree that, I don't think the county needs a full forensic audit right now, but I think that what Ms. Schmelzer is speaking about is very important, that the taxpayers of this county understand that we are watching and that we are making sure that the money in this county is going where it's intended and our dollars are well spent. Commissioner Boyce?
Well said. I'll just put a little exclamation mark on that in the notion that is somewhat rumored within the county that we are hiring at random and not with a lot of forethought and spending a lot of money. And as I look and watch, and I think the auditors would bear that out, of course, it would be my preference to have the Commissioner's office be the first place to be audited, or maybe the second, doesn't matter. But I just want to assure the public that we are absolutely determined to figure every possible way to cut costs and provide the services and be available to the citizens and make this work. And I think we've got a lot of good evidence to demonstrate that that is happening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
I think in order to move forward in a positive way, we need to dig in and look and see where everything's going and ways that we can improve. So I'm for it.
Okay. So I have a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
And I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
So can we do this 5 minutes earlier, Commissioner Boyce?
You can do whatever.
Because I
have till noon to get there. or
Okay, so
11.
what I'd like to do now, rather than go into the amnesty program, I'd like to take our break now, and we'll reconvene at 10:15. I will give you the extra 10 minutes on that. And thank you for everyone for understanding, please. And we'll bring up the amnesty when we get back. We're in recess.
Amnesty next, Commissioner?
Amnesty is next, yes, sir. Boy, you just gotta wait for some of these commissioners sometimes. I'll tell you, we're 49, no, oh, you're early. My big mouth too soon again, didn't I?
Never late.
All
I
right.
like the energy in
Ready?
here a lot better than the last group.
I hear that a lot.
It is really enjoyable to come to a commission.
Thank you. We are back in session, 10:15.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce was back on time. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for that extra time. There's $293,000 Title II Regional Advisory money available. Our number one priority is for the Curry County Fire Training Center, Emergency and Fire Training Center, and so I'll give a report on that at Commissioner's time. And thank you for that time. They got me right in, and I presented a letter, which I will also present during Commissioner comments. Thank you again.
Okay. Mr. Barnes,
When you're done speaking, please.
you want to cut me up after, or what?
I just want to hear what you have to say before I comment on it.
All right, so we have had conversations for several months I have had with Jim Colin and the tax assessor's office. I have recently had a conversation with Ms. Crockett. I have had conversations with our code enforcement officers. And as you know, Mr. Colin has presented testimony to this board as well as slideshows showing some of the, I would call, severe violations of our codes and our planning of properties that were filed for as pole buildings and or garages or outbuildings of sort that are now 2- and 3-bedroom homes. As many of us may know, there was recently a home here in Curry County valued in 7 figures that there was no planning on, there was no permits filed on that property. So what I am looking to do is have an amnesty program for the county that would begin on in the first of the year and go through June 30th. So it would be the first 6 months of next year. It would be a 6-month amnesty program to allow anyone in the county that owns property that they know is not up to code and or planned and or properly permitted to come in and get that done. There will be no penalties for doing that. They will still need to file for the proper permits, and they will still be will need to be assessed for the property tax due on that property, and I believe state law requires we go back 5 years on that.
6. I think it's 6. That's what Colin said at one time.
We can ask Jim.
I believe it's 5 or 6. Oh, okay. Anyway, so that's what we'll be requiring, but yes, you will need to come in and file your permits. We will waive all penalties if this board is to agree to do this. However, after June 30th of next year, you will need to know that the penalties will be severe. So this would be a great time for people in the county to come forward and get unpermitted buildings, outbuildings, additions, whatever they've done on their property, that is not properly, proper and legal to get that in line. Commissioner Gold?
I think it's important to note that, number one, those buildings are going to have to be inspected. Is that correct?
Correct.
And make sure they're up to code. And number two, they're going to be responsible for the back taxes, so.
Yes. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's been a lot of discussion, even before we got here, about this possible plan. So to see this progressing forward, I have two issues, not necessarily issues, but just comments that I would like to have the board consider. Number one, the time frame here being 6 months. I question if that is the best, if it isn't perhaps a little bit too long. I think that if we do proper, and I think you've already made some progress on this as well, good public notice, get the word out to neighbors, etc. If 4 months wouldn't be ample time, you just mentioned June 1st. I think the goal here is to get people to come in on their own. Related to that, with the effort we're making on the code enforcement, getting a secondary person, hopefully full-time, there's that perception, as you know, in the public that I don't want anybody coming unannounced to my property. I don't want anybody on my property, the personal, public, private property rights, etc. So I just don't want the county, and I'm not saying that we're at great risk of this, but I want to state here that I don't want the county to get that reputation that we're coming after everybody and we're going to do it this way. I don't think your plan suggests that. However, we need to be prepared for public backlash here, and we need to work with everybody and everyone that we all that we possibly can to make this work for our people that have to deal with these folks and get them in line. But I don't want to at least start with the notion that we're bringing in a heavy hammer. Does that make sense, Mr. Chair?
It does, and what we're asking is, this is an amnesty program. This isn't Marshall. We're asking people to come in and get their properties up to date. If after the amnesty program closes they have not, then there will be consequences, but they're of their own volition. It's not something we're forcing on them. So, again, this is something that we're going to ask people to come in, and if someone has something, say they bought a piece of property and they have a question on it, they may want to come in and ask and find out. And these kind of things will increase our tax rolls, will increase the revenues generated by the county to be able to properly staff our planning office, to be able to increase our assessors so that we can get off of a 15 or 16-year roll back into a normal 5 to 10-year roll, 5 to 8-year roll. So these are all things that that I believe the county will gain from this because I believe it is the county's hope that we will have a 30-day turnaround in the future from the filing of a building permit to the execution of it. So these are ways to get that done that will help also to further advancement in economic development and building here in the county. So, Commissioner Gold?
I think it's important to note that some individuals have purchased properties not knowing that they weren't permitted properly, and so there may be some problems in that area.
And that's what I said. If someone has something on their property that they are unsure about, and this may be an issue that is going to end up in the courts on civil penalties, but it won't be something that the county would be involved in, I don't believe. But I would leave that more to Council Huddle's interpretation of the laws on that and how that would play out. But I'm just asking this board that we look at, on Commissioner Boyce's comment, I think 6 months is good. First of all, I want to also make sure that the citizens are given enough time to prepare to come in and face the amnesty and what's going to come of that, that they can, have an extra month or two in preparation for that. So I think to keep it at a 6 month from January 1st through June 30th of 2020 would be a great time. And again, I think it would be imperative of Ms. Schmelzer's office and possibly planning, along with County Council and Jim Poland, to come up with the penalties for this if they don't come in. And I think they need to be stringent penalties.
So just a comment on the penalty. So the county does have to set their fee schedule. That's coming up pretty soon. So at that time, we can propose the fee or the penalty that people would face, and that would be discussed amongst the board, and the board would have to settle on that. So we do have to do that. And then just one other thing, the order that's before you actually says that it would be October until April. So if the board wants to go with January to June, just a note that we're going to have to change the order before we sign it. No big deal. I just want to make sure the record is clear on that.
And I know you and I spoke about October up to April, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of people come in November to pay their taxes.
Sure.
So the office is busy during that time. I think January it kind of starts to fall off, so this kind of thing might be a little bit more of a constant threat of people coming in.
Sure.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Following your explanation there, I am comfortable with a 6-month, and it can be any sequence that we just identified here. I just want to make just one more comment, and then I'll be ready to vote, Chair Pash. This board's been in business for 9 months now, and I think one of the greatest sources of pride that I see is what's going on in our community development, almost without exception. There is a spirit of serving the public in those 7 departments. It is 7, correct?
Yes.
In those 7 departments, and I don't want to lose that. Your 6 months instead of 4 may actually give, especially planning, building, code enforcement, extra time, assessor, because let's hope that there might be an avalanche of people wanting to come in. So we're going to need to give them ample time. I just don't want to lose. I want people to feel comfortable, to the extent we can affect that, to come into our planning department, come into our building department, and believe that they're going to really be helped, and that we can assist them to understand their responsibilities and overcome. I just don't want to lose that new spirit that I think we have all helped bring to this whole program. I'm not predicting that, but I just really want to emphasize how important I think that is to the public as we try and unite this county and solve our problems. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Gold?
I think when we're publicizing this, and I think it should be done for the next couple of months, we need to indicate to all individuals, if you purchased your property recently, you need to make sure that it was permitted correctly.
I agree. Counsel?
Thank you. Just to comment on the options on the timing. You could start it now and continue it through April, and then revisit in April if you think more time is needed. I'm not sure how it would roll out, announcing now that we're going to start it in January, what happens in these next few months. So if you just start it now and then reconsider in April whether you're going to continue to June or another 6 months or something if it's successful, however that goes. But that's just a little bit of input on the timing of the implementation of it is all.
How does the board feel on time?
Mr. Chair, I think that is the best approach to the way Council just explained it.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so then we'll go from
October 1st, is it?
The way it's
To
written.
April.
The way it's written is October 1st to April.
okay, so we'll do
Or
that.
October.
And we can visit any time, revisit. Thank you.
Mr. Barnes? You're up.
I think this is a really exciting program, and we look forward to working with people as we have in the past to try to facilitate everybody having the proper permits in place. The one thing that is a little bit of a concern, and I think people need to realize, is that while we can work with people and we can interpret county codes to their favor so they can get permits, sometimes we're not able to interpret state or federal codes to the benefit of an applicant to get them in compliance. So as long as there's a realization that there will be people that come in that we're not going to be able to fix their problem. And I just think that it's important to recognize that up front. We can do what we can in regards to a county rule or a county ordinance provision as long as it provides us the ability for interpretation. And what we have been doing the last 9 months is just that. We interpret the code in favor of the applicant. That's just the way we've been implementing the code, but we can't waive state or federal law.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate the board hearing this. May I have a motion, please?
So move, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next, we have 7D, Moss Adams. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, so as you know, we started our strategic planning process. Our planning consultant is Moss Adams. They have been in the county for 3 days now. They've met with all the department heads, I think. They've begun to talk to members in the community. They were present last night when we met with the cities and the ports. And they are here now to do their kickoff with the board, and so the public can watch this also to see where they're at in the process. So, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Julie. So we've met, but I'll reintroduce myself for the record. My name is Colleen Rosillas. I'm a senior manager with Moss Adams Consulting. I'm joined by Annie Rose Favreau. She's a senior consultant on our team. There's one other person on our team, the partner in charge of our group, Mark Starenka. He couldn't be here today, but you will see his face around as we continue this work. So we are local government consultants, and we do strategic planning and management consulting exclusively for local governments, primarily on the West Coast. We're really excited to be here, and we've had a really good couple of days meeting your team. In particular, we had just a fantastic management work session yesterday. Really excited about the work that we accomplished yesterday, and you should be really proud of the management team you have in place and how engaged they were and excited about this process. So that speaks a lot about your organization. So we are here doing strategic planning. Right now, we're in the information gathering phase, and we're going to collect a little bit of information from you today, and we'll also talk to you a little bit about what we have learned. We're in the initial phases, so nothing here is set in stone. Our next presentation to you will have the benefit of all of our interviews and community input. We will be doing a staff survey, things like that. So we'll just walk through. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I already did welcome. So we'll walk through a little bit about what our process is, and then talk to you about our initial kind of needs assessment or SWOT analysis, and then we'll gather some information from you about values and vision for the county, and we'll talk about next steps. And at any point during this process, please feel free to interrupt and ask questions. We like more input than less, so don't be shy. So our strategic framework, you'll see we have sort of a pyramid graphic here. Right now at the beginning, we're focused on the top of this pyramid, so mission, vision, and values, and this is really what guides us long term. And this should really be what the board is focused on. So we're setting the long-term vision, and we're defining what the role of government is in the county. We'll be establishing strategic goals. We'll be developing those goals based on our work as well as in conjunction with the management team, and we'll be bringing them to you to talk about prioritization to make sure that these goals make sense. We'll work on objectives, and then we're going to establish performance measures for the whole organization so that on a regular basis you're coming back to the board and to the public and saying, this is what we said we would do, and here's where we are in the process. And if we're deviating from where we hoped you would be, then we're going to provide you with a framework to explain that. We're also going to provide you with frameworks to develop departmental implementation plans. Everybody's got a role in achieving the strategic plan, as well as establishing some performance measures internally so that we can hopefully keep this plan moving forward and not put it on a shelf. So our planning process, we're in October. October just started. So here we are in that first bullet. We're interviewing folks. We're developing our mission, vision, and values. We'll be releasing a staff survey soon, so we'll collect information from staff that will help determine our needs assessment. We want to make sure everyone employed by the county is able to provide input. One thing that we really like to do, both in our staff survey and in public input, we always put some open-ended boxes about what we like about working here, where we want to see the county going, and we include those quotes in our strategic plan document. So in your printed document, you've got some, actual language from the people that live and work here about what's great about it and where we want to be. We'll be doing goal and objective development. We'll have at least one more work session with management to work on that and performance measures. We'll do public input at some point during this process. We talked quite a bit with the management team yesterday about what we think public input will look like. We're definitely going to try to meet the community where they are and get folks at perhaps some community events, perhaps do some open houses, some town halls, opportunities to reach the community that might not be able to come to a board meeting. And then we hope to have this plan adopted by you by the end of January. Julie, did you want to say anything else about the timeline?
Just that we originally were hoping that it would be done by December, but we did get started a little late on the process, so it might go into January, which actually ends up being really good timing with our wage study as well. So both projects should be coming to a close by the end of January. So come February, when we're just beginning to talk about budget, we have a very clear direction on where we want to go.
Yeah, and, oh, sure, go ahead.
Well, after you're done.
We're going to do our best to have a pretty complete draft before it goes for public input. So typically things don't change a ton based on public input. We try to use the public for prioritization. And so you'll see a close to final draft in December, regardless of whether or not we adopt it in December or January.
So my question is, here you're talking to our board at the very beginning, and then at the end it says board adoption of plan, and you've got county staff, public staff. Are there other opportunities where the board will be involved in the process along the lines?
Yeah, so typically we do at least 2 work sessions with the board. So we do this one, and then we come back and we also do some prioritization. And we can do that prioritization either in a public meeting, or we can have those conversations one-on-one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay?
So today's a work session?
Yes.
Thank you.
Today's the works. Are you working?
Oh, yeah, good. Sometimes.
Okay. Annie Rose is going to tell us a little bit about what we've learned so far in our work.
Yeah, so as part of the strategic planning process, we like to start out with, call it a SWOT analysis. So it's looking at the organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So really trying to understand what's the current situation of the organization, but then also the environment. A little closer? Is that better?
Thank you.
What is the environment that you're working within? Because really we want to be taking advantages of your strengths. We want to be taking advantages of what's working really well and building upon that success. And then also looking at where are there risks, where are there threats to this process, and to you guys working really, really well and effectively, and using this plan to help mitigate some of those issues. So this is very early days. This is just what we've been able to gather in terms of our very first interviews, our very first phone calls and conversations with stakeholders. So this will definitely be built out and informed more as we go through our staff survey process and gather more information. So just to go through this, sort of what we have found so far. So looking at internal strengths. So this is strengths of the organization, of the community, all of that. We have a lot of great things on this list. I don't think anything will be a very large surprise to anyone. You obviously have a lot of natural beauty, a lot of natural resources here. One of the things I will highlight on this list is dedicated employees. It's been very clear through our conversations that there are so many people here who are really committed to the work that they do, very dedicated to the community and giving back and being really strong public servants. And that's great to see, because that's really going to be the basis for all the rest of the work that you do. So that was exciting for us to really see that come through very strongly in our conversations. Moving on to some of the more challenging aspects in terms of what the organization is dealing with right now. Obviously, financial sustainability and stability is at the top of this list. That won't be a surprise. But that has a lot of cascading impacts throughout the rest of the organization in terms of service delivery, what you can do with limited resources, in terms of job stability for county staff, or the perception of job stability. That came up quite a bit in terms of feeling like we want to make sure that this is a place that we are going to be for many years. And then internal alignment around priorities was another really common theme that we heard here around how do we get on the same page? How do we get on the same page with the board? How do we get on the same page on the management team so that we can all be really working together as a team towards the priorities that we've identified? Looking at external threats, this is really sort of that broad picture. What is the environment that you're working within? Again, economic vitality is really at the top of this list, figuring out how can we have job opportunities, and really related to that, these are very much go back and forth and support each other, but affordable housing, making sure that if you have job openings, you actually have housing for folks who are potentially coming into the community as well, and being able to really support that. And I think the other piece on here is the diverse community needs. We've heard that there's, you cover a really large geographic range, you have a lot of different folks in this community, and so figuring out how do we make sure that we're really meeting this variety of needs that we hear.
Annie, I have a question before you go on.
Yeah.
I see that opioids is considered an external threat to county governance there. How did that come about? What were the comments on that?
Yeah, would you like to go for it? That came up quite a bit just in terms of saying, what are the challenges we're seeing in our community? And drug use being one of those things that really can impact so many different aspects here. It can impact who's in the market to have a job. It can impact how our health service is being used. It can impact just the feel of the community itself. And so this is an issue that obviously is not unique to this area at all, but is definitely being strongly felt here.
Thank you.
Would you add anything to that?
No.
Diverse community, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Diverse community needs, just spend a little time on that if you would, please.
Yeah, and this gets back to, we heard quite a bit about that there is a dynamic happening here of folks who've been in this area for a really long time, folks whose families have lived there for a really long time, who really have deep roots in the community, and then new people who are coming in and who are excited to be here, really want to live here, appreciate what this county has to offer, but potentially have different perspectives or needs in terms of what they think the community should be, what they think the county should be delivering for them, and what that looks like. So just trying to figure out how you balance that in a really thoughtful manner.
Thank you. Good.
So finally, we like to end with external opportunities. So what are we seeing out there that we think that we can really be working towards and taking advantage of? And you do obviously have this very unique landscape and climate here that's going to be the basis for things like tourism, for things like outdoor activities, and that's already happening, but how can we strengthen those activities potentially? I think partnerships and collaborations came up a lot of saying how can we be working both with our cities and our ports, but also nonprofits in the community, all of those pieces, so that we're really taking advantage of the great amount of expertise and knowledge that we have in this community and working together to make things as efficient and effective as possible. Any questions on this before we move on? Yeah.
Sorry, just a comment. You mentioned town special districts and nonprofits. Are you also looking at our federal and state agency partners in those partnerships and collaborations?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing is I didn't see private industry listed on there. Any public-private opportunities that you're going to explore?
Yes, that is absolutely on the list. These were the ones that sort of came up most frequently in our conversations,
And
but those are
the two comments I just made, I did not give to you in either our in-person interview or the management session. And I know you gave me the card to give you comments, but it's just things that I've thought about after seeing it again. So.
Yeah, and I think especially in areas like tourism, that presents a whole, you have a whole different range of partnerships that you can attract when you're looking at something like tourism versus maybe something like healthcare. So I think it really depends too on where we're saying our priorities are and then finding who are all the many, many potential partners that we could be working with. So thank you for adding those.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about mission and vision and values and what we use a strategic plan for. So this is really the foundation of the strategic plan, even though if it's at the top of the pyramid. Maybe we need to fix our graphic to make it like the foundation of a house or something. Really, what we like to see is that we're using a strategic plan. We set a strategic plan for maybe 3 to 5 years. The mission and the vision and values may not change for quite some time. We have some clients where the communities have had the same vision for 20 or 30 years and it still resonates. But what they do is they help us to make decisions. In local government, we have limited resources. We often have ideas that may not be funded. And so how do we make decisions? How do we compromise? We use these statements to ask, okay, we have a program, we have a service that we're thinking about either expanding or introducing, or we're thinking about cutting. Does it support our vision? Does it help us achieve our mission, and does it align with our values? And if it doesn't, then we shouldn't be pursuing that. And what we would like to see built here, and we think is in the most effective local governments, is that we all adopt that as part of our organizational culture. We believe in these, and that future boards and future management teams, when we're long gone, are referring to these as really foundational as part of our culture. And so that's why we're spending a lot of time working on this, both with management and with you, because we really want this to resonate and feel like it belongs to you. Did you have a question?
No, I was just agreeing with you. I think that a lot of what we do here with the mission or vision part of this is that we hopefully hold future boards to the vision of this county and what the citizens are going to contribute to this, that we all adhere to what we agree to here, not only with this board, but hopefully with coming boards, that we would all agree to this. And I know there's going to be minor changes, but this will be the direction that I hope that the citizens of this county want to go to. Commissioner Gold?
I just think without a vision and a strategic plan, we end up going off on tangents and not focusing as we should. So thank you.
Yeah, and we will tell you from experience, we're regularly brought in. I mean, people don't usually call us because everything's going great, right? We're regularly brought in to do things like management reviews and organizational assessments for organizations that have really strayed away from what their core mission is. And it's really easy to butt heads when you don't have a document to refer to, when you don't have, foundational pieces of work that can help define who you are, even as individuals might change, even as your environment might change. So
that's what I said last night at the meeting. I can't imagine a county not having a strategic plan. I can't imagine that. So.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about values first. So values talk about who we are. And it's typically really thinking about how do we treat each other? How do we treat the public? What are our expectations for our organizational culture? And we'd like to get some thoughts from you, if we're defining what organizational values are, what you think are the priorities. So we're saying to ourselves and the community, this is who we are as a county. We have some examples, and these are just examples. So I'll just give you a minute to read them.
Alphabetical order?
We're trying to be as, we're not trying to stack the deck.
You want to ask each one individually?
Yeah, well, we'd just like to hear from you. What do you think? And it doesn't have to be on this list, but what do you think, when you think about Curry County and about the government, what do you think describes who we are?
Pick three, Commissioner Boyce.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm pausing at each one. Obviously, that is a great list. It represents high goals. It represents wonderful principles that we should all live and work by.
Doesn't have to be on that list, though. You can pick something that's...
Well, I'm not going to add anything. No need. No need. It starts with accountability, ends with transparency. That says it all, in my view, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I think accountability is very important. I think the public needs to see that we are accountable. Sustainable. We need to make our county sustainable. And gosh and golly, this is hard.
I know. That's why you hired us.
I think accountability goes with honesty. I think it goes with, let's say professional.
I would probably say I like being proactive in a county, growing with the county and keeping up with what's going on in the world, getting ahead of it rather than behind it. I like being very ethical. And I think accountability would probably, listening to all three of us, it would probably be at the top of the list. But I also like to be very collaborative with other organizations like I said when you interviewed me yesterday, relationships and what we do are immeasurably important. We have to have relationships that last a lifetime in order for us to succeed. People have to trust you, of course, and you build that through long-term relationships. So I think that to be collaborative with other groups is extremely important. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have good peripheral vision. That's why I don't always look at
You do?
people.
I try not to hold my hand up too high here. You do excellent. You know, there's a certain portion of our public that sees these as trendy buzzwords. So the challenge for us, and certainly in the next 14 months, 16 months, is to make this a reality and not let it be just those buzzwords. When you say excellent, sometimes perfection kills the good, and it's also can be a delay. And so I want to set realistic goals through this process, and then at the end of that 16 months, yeah, I'll be held accountable.
All right.
We will be held accountable. Thank you.
No, you. Go ahead.
So I'd like to just get into, we heard accountability from all three of you. And so when we establish value statements, so we'll have a word, right? And then maybe we'll have a sentence that explains what we mean by accountability. So let's focus a little bit on accountability and think about sitting in your chairs. What does that mean to you?
I guess I'll lead off with that one. Accountability, like we spoke about last night, you know, and there's another word that comes into this, which is trust. And I think a lot of the incorporated cities, the ports in the county have looked at the board and have lost trust. I think a lot of the citizens of the county have lost trust in what this county board is here for, what we do and what we're supposed to do, and our leadership. And I think that starts to, you know, the accountability of what we do will bring that back, but it's going to take time. So I think building that trust back through by being accountable to the citizens of this county would be my line. Commissioner Gold?
If we say we're going to do something, it needs to be done. That's accountability, and done well.
Commissioner Boyce?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned trust. I think that trust is slowly returning. And commissioners sometimes are an easy target, as we know. But the dedication comes from your own heart. And when you sign up for a job this intense, I knew it was going to be busy. I didn't know it was going to be this intense. So I'm enjoying, especially the last 9 months, but the absolute 2.5 years of that intensity and seeing some successes. And that motivates more success, motivates more enthusiasm. So yes, it comes back to trust. Accountability is making decisions and standing by them, and then having the responsibility to identify and explain those decisions, even 2 years later, even 4 years later. And so I have to ask myself that, and I'm willing to take on that role. And I think I, again, have the obligation to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Back at you.
Thank you. That was great. This is fantastic input. So we are going to move along to the fun part, which is visioning. So a community vision, often what we do is we'll ask you to think about, okay, let's think about 10 years from now. We're reading a newspaper article about something that happened with respect to county government, and what does the headline say? We're thinking about really long-term, who do we want to be? It doesn't necessarily have to be achievable, measurable, check off the box, right? But what we want to think about is it's also not likely to change over time. We want it to be something we can hang our hats on long-term. So if 20 years from now, all new people are in this room, they're still thinking we want to achieve a vision for the county. We're going to show you a couple of examples. And something that I just want to say from the management work session yesterday is people really resonated with this first vision example, and in particular the first phrase, so a place where people want to live. That was something that the management team really felt was important and valuable. We might see that in our vision statement based on how much people like that. So just take a moment to read these, and then we're going to ask you to think a little bit about the future of the county.
The future for me would be sustainable jobs to bring our children home after they complete their school, their education, grow up in the communities that they were raised, and grow their families in these communities. Seeing our ports continue to grow and thrive to bring tourism into this county through the many facets of ways that we have to do that, through fishing and recreational sports, to our commercial fishing, to all of that, and seeing a sustained growth that is careful and well planned. But we have to grow this county to sustain it. We have to grow the county to be able to pay our bills for the future. Commissioner Gold?
I would say it's a place where people want to live, it's a safe place, and it's economically stable.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again. My mom did a play in the Pistol River area last weekend, and there was 12 tables with couples representing 12 different families. As a little kid, I lived at Mac Arch, and so all those families, most of those families, were very familiar, the names to me. And so in this play, we would go up and they would take about 6, 7, 8 minutes just to explain their travel to this part of the country, this part of Oregon. And I remember there's several stories that go with that, but it was just fascinating to hear these families hear these actors represent the old-time families. And one of them was, I got here, it's the first time I've ever seen that much water. I could not believe it. And I think it was one of the carpenters, doesn't matter, but in those days, until the 1920s, the people that come from Grants Pass, through the road, they made it to this side of the Chetco River, and from Brookings on, there was only a trail to Pistol River, a horse trail. And so that's how Pistol River was homesteaded. And so when you look at what that meant to them to see the ocean for the first time and realize it was not a lake, and Port Orford, we have the westernmost part, Cape Blanco, the entire United States. So in that, with this incredible area, I don't think we lose sight of that, but there's a little bit of a burden on us to remember that and to move forward. And twice in those two paragraphs, or 3 or 4 sentences, it mentions the quality of life, and we've got a head start. Should have a head start in a lot of other areas. So it's again our obligation to move forward and understand that and do everything we can towards those 3 words. And I think we are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I think what I'm hearing from that is perhaps about the natural environment and maybe a sense of wonder and gratitude for the environment and where we are.
And a wonderful balance and mix, as Chair Pash just mentioned, with you cannot have a culture that doesn't have reasonable growth, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be that mix. And somebody told me the other day, our greatest export in Curry County is our kids. So to hear Christine Neal Mather today find her livelihood here, again, that's a tremendous motivation for me. I don't know if any of my sons will be back, or kids or grandkids, maybe at some point, but it's going to be a while. So we got some work out ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much for your input on that. So I'm going to skip over this part. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what our next steps are. So we're going to take all this input that we've received from you, and we'll draft up some mission, vision, and value statements. We're going to send those out to the management team as a survey to take a look at what their input is, and come back to you then with some draft statements to see if they resonate with you, and we'll finish those up and hopefully have those finalized by our next meeting. We'll be doing a staff survey, and we'll be working on goals and objectives and performance measures. And then we'll be working on prioritizing those with you and adopting the plan. So you'll see a lot of us over the next few months. You all have our contact information, and we'd love to hear from you. We really want as much information from you as possible and your thoughts. This is your plan. We're just shepherding you through the process. So as we go forward, please feel free to reach out, and we're always happy to talk about what we're doing and where we are and what's going on. Any questions?
I just want to get clarification on the staff survey. My understanding is that we do want to engage all employees, so all employees are going to have the opportunity to answer that survey.
Yes, we do want to engage all employees, yes.
And then there is also the opportunity for public surveying at the public input stage. Correct?
Yes, yeah. And we have already done we've done some phone calls with members of the community as well, and we'll be reaching out. A number of folks recommended other people who are important to engage in the process, so we'll be reaching out to folks individually as well. But we definitely will try to get as broad public input as possible and as much staff input as possible.
Thank you.
Okay.
Look forward to working with you guys.
Yeah, us
Great.
too. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
All right, next we're going to move on. Didn't think we'd be here so early. The director's report.
Sure. Just a couple things. At 2 meetings now, Commissioner Pash, you have brought up asking staff to look at some processes, specifically how we do payroll.
Yes.
So I've talked with that department, and they do have some ideas of some different programs that we can look at that would do payroll, that also incorporate other human resource functions that could save us money but also make it more efficient, and then get us, especially when you're looking at hiring practices, more applicants, getting the word out to more people so we have a larger pool to choose from for when we're looking for prospective employees. So I have spoke with Charlene, the director of that department, and we're going to be looking at some demos and some different options for the board and the management team to consider to move those forward.
Great.
Charlene, finance director again, has been working on a work program, as you're aware. We have had a couple departments, I think it's about 5 departments that have stepped forward and said they want to take advantage of the people that do come through that work program, so we're going to be doing a little more work on that.
Good.
Insurance that we charge kind of is a hindrance on that, because sometimes by the time the people have to pay the insurance, they're working for very little money, so that's something that may hold us up on that program, but we're trying to work through that to see what our options are with that. Just a note on the Suicide Council that that will be coming up for its second reading at our next meeting. And then, of course, we do have 90 days before that is effective. But we will start advertising for that, provided the board approves that at the second reading. And that's all I have right now.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce.
Chair Pash, thank you. I got to get my, JJ, you might need to help me here. I can see
The mouse, I think, ended up over there at the podium.
Do I have a volunteer? I don't know, Barry. First, I don't know if Barry can zoom in on the go bag. If the public doesn't know what a go bag is, most do, but if you don't, that's a bag you have in the trunk of your car or somewhere in the outgoing door of your home, so that if we have a natural disaster that you need to evacuate your home, you have a few items. So I'm proud of Jeremy Dumeyer, Emergency Management Coordinator, for developing this bag, which, remind the public, he is putting on almost, what's the term, single-handedly, the Emergency Management Expo, which will be at the fairgrounds December 12th. So we're very excited about that, and I think it's a good next step to help the county be more prepared and the public better aware. How do I get out of here?
Ruh-roh. There you go, top corner, way up there. Voice letter.
We are working with diligently with the Governor's Fire Recovery, sometimes called Response Council. And this is a letter. I would like to read this letter. It's a little long. Excuse me. Public to know where we are and why we think that they're. Everybody okay?
No.
Are you a
Excuse me.
two-seater or one?
I think that's just a one, I hope.
So,
Might pass
to
out.
Matt Donegan, Chairman, this guy's working, just been a tremendous source and spark plug for the whole process. Dear Mr. Donegan, I send thanks to you and our council members for the support to consider our proposal for a regional fire training center in Southwest Oregon. As you know, this proposal is also strongly supported by our state delegation in Southwest Oregon, including Senators Roblin and Hurd, Representatives McEwen, Brock Smith, and retired Representative Krieger. We appreciate each staff as well as the governor's awareness of the significant fire risk to our citizens and further the ongoing threat to our fabulous and unique Oregon natural resources. We believe the Rogue River Siskiyou Fire and Emergency Training Center aligns directly with the governor's executive order. Specifically, response to fires on unprotected, underprotected, and unprotected lands. Wildfire smoke, assisting communities affected by wildfires, prevention, treatment, and cost containment of wildfires. Our county has a story to tell. It relates well to those four executive order topics above. Natural disasters impacting Curry County. Over the last 10 years have been hit extremely hard. What follows is not a conclusive list, but highlights the contrasting range and interconnected issues resulting from catastrophic events here. All had the potential for deadly consequences. 2011, the tsunami that really hurt the port of Brookings Harbor. 2015, the giant harbor sinkhole. 2017 and 18, of course, the last 26 months, we lost 350,000 acres. 2019, of course, the major slide. And then finally, the April flood. We don't get floods in April, you know. Right. Once in a while, early March, but not April. You know, no one on any of these natural disasters were killed, thank goodness, but we did have some minor injuries on a couple. So I would ask you and the drafters in the final report to the governor to please understand how grateful our people are for the work you and our council are doing. We kindly ask you to include this concept to give our county and the citizens of the southwestern corner of Oregon the opportunities to fully participate in the solutions so critical to our future. The Curry fires, I won't read all this, but it's 6 major fires in 32 years, including the Biscuit Fire, largest in Oregon history at 500,000 acres. Obviously, a lot of this has been a reburn. $400 million total for those 6 fires. 2 of them were natural fires, because they're, generally speaking, because they're under the 100,000 acre threshold. The Oregon need, this is where the Rogue River Siskiyou Regional Fire and Emergency Training Center fits. Clearly, the solutions to address the issues above are multifaceted, but this project would help us and Oregon immensely. We simply need to add to our regional toolbox an immediate increased capacity to provide training for a strong new generation of firefighters. Our priority and focus is training firefighters, wildland, and structural at all levels as quickly as possible. The experts and professionals understand that efficient, cost-effective, and convenient access to training is critical. Please consider this reminder. In order to stop the hazardous wildfire smoke problem in Jackson and Josephine counties, we first have to stop the mega fires in Curry County. All of our cities, and especially the suburbs in our road basin counties, both close and not so close, are incredibly vulnerable. The plan specific to this project, we are quite enthused to already have many partners as well as $140,000 in grants and related pledges to date. We have a wonderful location just 3 miles up Rogue River from Gold Beach, a site with a total of 153 acres, which we can also demonstrate is ideal for this center. With your help and a commitment, this is addressed to the council, remember, of many partners, we can make that case in multiple ways. Phase 2 would be to purchase the property from the governor's wildfire response team, Curry County. Numerous stakeholders and citizens in and around our region are asking this important team for support as we quickly move to that next phase. Please include this letter and full concept and final draft recommendations to the governor, which should be by the end of this month, Mr. Chair, and a copy to our key people here in Curry County. And at some point, I need to come before the board, of course, and get the support. But right now, it's moving fairly well. As I speak, the Regional Advisory Committee is also looking at a grant application, Title II, from Economic Development Coordinator Madison and Golby's Fire Chief Krieger. Correct me if I'm wrong, Director Snow, I think it's $47,000 that will add, is that right?
I don't know the exact number.
Might be 60, but it'll add to our 140,000. Here's also the next step. And I think we have a very good chance of getting that grant as well.
Commissioner Boyce, you spoke about coming before the board for approval.
Well, I just want to make sure that I'm not assuming that I have that approval, and even though we've had, through the Fire Council, I didn't know if maybe it would be an appropriate time after the plan is released to the governor.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that the board did go on record in favor by supporting the resolution.
Oh, that's
so we do have that resolution, which shows board support so far. So I understand, we have to accept grants and do formal approvals further in the process, but I just want to make sure the public is aware that the board does support the project to date by that resolution. So we do have that on file.
Just want to make sure we're following through properly. Thank you very much. Well said. I think, and this is one of my 17 plans was that I came out with in January, late January, my first year, 2017, was to get our own Curry County Forestry Division. So we're making some good progress on that. I spoke earlier, Mr. Chair, on the $15,000 RAC grant that we've applied for. I won't read this letter, but it gives some very similar reasons. There's a $293,000 available to Curry County this cycle. We mentioned our sister counties are very good resources for us. I'll actually be talking to them about that tomorrow at our AOC District 4 meeting here in Gold Beach. List the critical disasters we've had here, because this is not just a fire training center, as you know. It was going to evolve into a fire and emergency training program. And so that's what I delivered to the RAC committee just a little bit ago. Got my fingers crossed. And not to just make this a fire report, because I have a couple other things here, maybe 3 other things. This is from the Oregon Department of Forestry report that we had from Ron Graham, Deputy Chief of the Fire Protection for the 2019 fire season. He reported at the Association of ONC Counties, BLM 18 counties, last Friday. I would encourage the public to contact our office and look at this information. It is, obviously we had a mild, comparatively, a fire season to the last 2 years. But, oh, there it is, right? Where'd it go? The stats that looking at the averages, compared to last year, and then the 10-year average, I'll just spend a little time here, Mr. Chair. The average acres that we lose in a given year in Oregon is, that the Oregon Department of Forestry is responsible for is 41,000, 2018, 76,000, give or take, just to give you an idea how caused and the number of fires. So that actually didn't go down that much in 2019, but there's a greater awareness, and as you know, ODF gets 90% of their fires out before 10 o'clock the next morning. I think that's all I have on the screen here. Wild Rivers Forest Collaborative, just here's my minutes, but just one side note that you and I are dealing with, or that in different facets, but the ice plants, the rare plants that are at the north end of the Cape Blanco Airport, we're getting a little bit of support from the collaborative in being able to physically move those rare plants when it comes time to extending, and if that's possible, extending the Cape Blanco Airport, presumably on the north side, but we're not ruling out on the opposite end. But that's good news, and I'm very glad for that support there, and I think it can be done and not disrupt the program there. I'm working on law enforcement with the sheriff, law enforcement collective throughout the whole county. You know, it's the concept that 23,000 people, and we have four very good law enforcement programs. But can we afford that? There's a lot of ways to have better coverage, better safety for the officers, and obviously save money. So we had a group that did a study. I think you might be aware, I know Director Schmelzer is, that did a study that it's a large binder, and so that's a great resource, and I hope it's one of those things that was put on the shelf that we can come back and visit. The Portland State University study that looked at the two
911.
Yeah, the two 911 dispatch centers. I have a big concern, and I think you're aware of this as well. May not go anywhere, and we spent a total of $35,000 on that. So it's going to be a challenge for us to get on board with the Brookings City Council and vice versa to see if this can be revived and recovered in some fashion. So I having looked a little bit at the study, I see no reason why that wouldn't be a logical step in saving money for this county. And it's going to be a responsibility we're going to have to pursue. You know, the Sudden Oak Death Task Force is continually an ongoing issue and also responsibility. So I have nothing to report today other than last week we were at Pistol River and that went very well. And then the Coos Curry Housing Task Force what day was that? Monday? Anyway, Summer Madison gave a very good report of the sequence that we've been able to accomplish the last 2.5 years, and very well done. And I see that group coming together a little bit towards our goal of hopefully finding funding outside the general fund for a housing coordinator. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gold?
I've got a few things. I went to a jail tour. Very, very loud and noisy. But anyway, I had a good talk with Joel, who is in charge of the jail, and he is working with Coos County. They are coming up with a fee that is going to go on everybody's electric bill to help with the sheriff's department up there. And I think once that's set up, I talked about this earlier and was told that the board's never going to okay that. That's the electric board. But apparently it's almost a done deal. And so once that precedent is set, I think we could, as a county, possibly do something like that on everybody's electric bill so it doesn't hit the property owners solely. I was also able to go to the 50th anniversary of the Good Samaritan Hospital. It was a lovely celebration, and unfortunately both my parents had to be there at one time, so I was happy to be there and see some of the same nurses that took care of them. I'm continuing with the SWAC seminars and so forth. They're going along nicely. I've also set up meetings with the elementary principals in the county so that they can collaborate and talk about what's working for them and how we can make our schools more successful. And the elementary schools, we're going to be principals, I'm going to be meeting with them. So that's going to be October 22nd and 29th that I'll be doing those meetings with them in kind of a non-confrontational, non-threatening way. So superintendents are not invited so they can talk freely. That's it.
I don't have very much. I just want to bring back to this board to remind you. I wrote a letter to that included the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as ODF&W, the governing bodies of Jackson County, including their county council, and the governing body of Josephine County and their county council, to a meeting on October 31st. I'm inviting this board to it as well, and hopeful that all of you will attend. It is about the Rogue River issues that we face with the Army Corps of Engineers. I'll just briefly read the letter to you. I would like to invite you to attend a joint meeting of the Curry County Board of Commissioners and the Josephine Board of Commissioners to discuss the Rogue River fisheries, more particularly the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers management objectives. The discussion would be in light of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife management objectives outlined in the Rogue River Spring Chinook Conservation Plan of 2007 as updated in 2019, and as informed by the historical context of the Flood Control Act of 1962 and the 1972 Lost Creek Project EIS and the supporting documents. The meeting is scheduled to take place in Josephine County Commissioner's offices at 500 Northwest 6th Street in Grants Pass, Oregon. The meeting is scheduled for October 31st, 2019, beginning at 10 a.m., and lunch will be provided, and it will probably go till about 2 p.m. Invited attendees are the Corps of Engineers and the representatives, as well as corresponding representatives from ODF and W, as a joint meeting of two local governing bodies, and we are including Jackson as well. If they come, then they would be the third governing body, and the meeting would be subject to the requirements of the Oregon Public Meetings laws, so members of the public are welcome. We on the Rogue River look forward to sitting down to a real discussion on what we view are the shortcomings of the Lost Creek Lake project and the Spring Chinook fisheries. With kindest regards, I remain. So this is something that we are going to do on the 31st. I think it was already put out to the board on this, and if it hasn't been, it was going to go out today. But we are going to be doing this as a group. All of us sit together and start to look at all the work that Steve Byerlin and Council Huddle have done on this already, and the years and years of research that Mr. Byerlin has done on the Rogue River, the fisheries, the spawning grounds, the gravel that we all see at the mouth of our river now, and how we're going to deal with this in coming years, and the impact on the economic development and loss of revenue resources to businesses, to the guides, to the whole region of the Rogue River Basin. So we look forward to having that meeting. I hope it's productive. I hope everyone shows up as they have promised they would. Mr. Byerlin has had some extremely positive conversations with ODF and W, and as well as a lot of the fishing guide organizations throughout the state of Oregon, throughout the northwest of this country, a lot of who he's been associated with for 45 years, and he has had no negative response to any of the information that he's provided to them. They've all wanted to join and get on board with this. So I will be hopeful that our entire board, as well as Jackson and Josephine County, shows up for this. I'm actually probably guessing we'll have a few news channels there as well on this. So it is a large issue for the Rogue. Commissioner Boyce?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
We're going to have our AOC District 4 meeting on Friday, and I understand all three commissioners will be there, which I think is very good to hear. I'm vice chair of that, and I would like to ask Chair Morgan from Josephine County if she will call on you, if you're okay with that, to give that report there. Sure. Bob Strasser will be there, commissioner from Jackson County. I don't think the other two Jackson County commissioners will be, but I know you've got acquainted with them too. And I know Strasser well enough that I can maybe nudge him a little bit, because I assume you have not heard from Jackson County.
I've talked to Bob about this several times.
Good. So. And so you anticipate that they would come to Josephine County on the 31st?
I anticipate that they will come. I'm hopeful that they will come, and they will all come united. So
wonderful. Okay, the other question I have, this is not open to the public then?
It is open to the public.
Because so this is not the meeting that I've discussed with Mr. Byerlin on bringing in the sport fishing and the, because there could be a lot of people, and I don't know if we should have a secondary meeting. Originally, I talked to him about having a Gold Beach and a Grants Pass meeting, and so, man, the place could be packed, even though it's fishing season, 10 o'clock in the morning.
I'm hopeful that it is. We want to have our public informed on what we're doing. This is a great way.
This is in place of a public meeting.
No, this was, I'm not sure what you spoke to Mr. Barlin about. Is this the same meeting that we've all spoken about jointly?
I don't know what Court Boyce has spoken to Steve Ireland about, but this meeting is proposed to be a public meeting. If I could make a comparison, Jackson County Commissioners invited the Army Corps and the ODF&W to one of their public meetings for a presentation of their management objectives and stuff. And it's going to be going over some of that in light of the information that Steve Ireland and myself have uncovered or, revealed and divulged since that time. So we're going to present them. It's a follow-up, essentially, to that meeting. So it'll be a public meeting, public discussion.
So you and Mr. Byerland are going to that meeting?
All of us are.
The one in Josephine County that...
We're asking the entire board to go.
Sorry, I thought this was something you were talking about separately with Jackson County.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Nope. No, this is the same meeting. We're asking all three boards, along with their councils, and we are expecting the Army Corps of Engineers, ODF&W, and probably some of the fishing guide organizations throughout the Northwest. And we are hopeful to be able to ask the Corps of Engineers some questions and get answers from them on some of these topics that we're going to bring up. So it will be an interactive meeting with all of our organizations. And the public will be, I don't know, as we are going to have a public comment section in there, because it would probably be an extremely extensive one, but we do want to at least invite the public to the meeting so that they have an opportunity to learn what's happening in the road basin.
If I may?
Sure.
I'm concerned that might be a mistake because you get, and maybe not, and I don't know, inside the Josephine County Courthouse, there's a room.
I think we have to, because we're going to have three boards and all the commissioners be there. We have to follow the public meeting laws because of that.
Okay, and I certainly accept that. I just would be just a little warning that you possibly could have 50 people want to speak.
I think we might have 500 people there, and I'm sure they're planning for that.
So
because at the last meeting there was already two news organizations there, so I'm sure those will be there at a minimum as well.
Right, and if I could, a public meeting is not always a public hearing. So the public has a right under the public meeting law to attend a public meeting, but there's not a right necessarily to speak at a public meeting. It's only with permission.
I think you've had to explain that to me about 4 times.
That's okay, but it would be the will of ultimately the bodies there. But I think in the case if there's too many, I think the idea would be for management reasons not to allow public comments. They could submit them in writing, but I think that's a detail we can arrive at jointly among the different bodies.
Very good.
Josephine has a pretty good sized meeting room.
In the courthouse?
It's next door. It's actually in a building called the Ann Basker, and they can get quite a few people in there. We've had them for marijuana hearings, and it gets pretty full.
So those are my comments.
Yes. So I want to ask you publicly, you would be comfortable giving a report Friday to the...
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So at this time, that's the end of our public meeting. We are going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we are going to enter into executive session under ORS 1926602F to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. ORS 1926602H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. And 192.6602D, and that one was...
to confer with designated representatives of labor negotiations.
Okay. So we are in recess. We will reconvene after executive session. Mr. Hall. And the board and county employees are to proceed as instructed from the executive session. With nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.